You already know you should leave. That's not the problem. You've known for a while now. Maybe months. Maybe longer. You've had the conversation with yourself 100 times. You've made the list. You've seen the pattern. You've even said the words out loud to a friend. I know I need to go. And then you stayed. Not because you're weak, not because you're stupid, and I need you to hear this clearly, not because you love him too much. You stayed because leaving would require you to face something that has nothing to do with him. Tonight I want to go through 7 reasons why leaving feels impossible, even when you already know you should. Not the surface reasons, the real ones, the ones that live underneath the ones you tell people. And I'll warn you now, some of these are going to be uncomfortable to recognize in yourself. That discomfort is not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're getting close to something true. I stayed in a relationship once, much longer than I should have. Not because I didn't see what was happening. I saw it clearly. I stayed because seeing clearly and being ready to go are 2 completely different things. That took me years to understand. The first reason, you don't know who you are without this relationship. When you've been inside something this long, especially something with high emotional intensity, your identity starts to organize itself around it. Not just around him, around the role you play inside this dynamic. You're the one who understands him when nobody else does. The one who sees what he could be. The one who stays when everyone else would have left. The one who loves him at his most difficult. That role is exhausting, but it's also yours. It's how you make sense of yourself. Leaving doesn't just mean losing him. It means losing the version of you that exists inside this relationship. And we are far more afraid of losing ourselves than we are of losing another person. A woman I'll call Nora had been with someone for 6 years. When I asked her what she was most afraid of if she left, she didn't say being alone. She said, I don't know who I am if I'm not trying to fix this. You're not staying because you love him. You're staying because you haven't yet discovered who you are when you're not organized around this particular pain. That's not weakness. That's what happens when a relationship becomes your identity before you were finished becoming yourself. The second reason, leaving means admitting the story was wrong. Every time you chose to stay, you made a quiet internal bet. He'll change. This time will be different. What we have is worth fighting for. You didn't just invest time and emotion. You invested your judgment, your narrative, your belief in your own ability to read people correctly. Leaving means those bets didn't pay off. For women who take pride in their perception, in being the person who sees people deeply, who doesn't get fooled, that admission is quietly devastating. It's not about him anymore. It's about being right. A client I'll call Sarah told me something that stopped me mid-session. She said, if I leave now, it means the last 3 years meant nothing. I asked her, or does it mean they meant something, and you're finally ready to stop paying for that lesson with more years? She was quiet for a long time. Admitting you stayed too long isn't the same as saying those years were wasted. It means you were human. You hoped. You tried. The exit doesn't erase what was real, but it does require you to release the version of you who was certain she could make this work. The third reason, nobody prepared you for the in-between. We talk about leaving and staying as if there are 2 clear states, but there's a third place. The space between the decision and the settled life on the other side. And it's the most disorienting place most women have ever been. The weeks after leaving when you don't feel relief. You feel nothing. Or worse, you feel grief so acute it seems like loss, not liberation. You miss him. Not because the relationship was good, because familiar pain is less frightening than unfamiliar peace. Most women who go back during the in-between, not because they changed their mind, because nobody told them the in-between was supposed to feel this way. A woman I'll call Diane left after 2 years of knowing she needed to. She called me 3 weeks later and said, I feel worse than I did before I left. I think I made a mistake. I asked her, does worse mean wrong? Or does worse mean you're finally feeling something you'd been numbing for years? The pain of leaving isn't new pain. It's old pain, finally given permission to surface. The in-between isn't a sign you should go back. It's a sign the grief is moving. And grief that moves is grief that eventually ends. The fourth reason, you've already invested so much that stopping feels like waste. 3 years, 4 years, maybe more. You gave this relationship your time, your energy, your patience, your hope. The person you were when you entered it is not the person you are now. You changed for this. You waited for this. You sacrificed things for this. And the mind says, if you leave now, all of that disappears. This is what psychologists call the sunk cost. The human tendency to keep investing in something because of what we've already put in, rather than what we're likely to get out. We do it with money. We do it with careers. And we do it, quietly and devastatingly, with the people we love. A woman I'll call Maya told me she stayed an extra 2 years because leaving felt like throwing away everything she'd built. I asked her what exactly she'd built. She thought for a long time. Then she said, a very detailed understanding of disappointment. What you've already given doesn't become meaningless when you leave. It becomes the price of a lesson that is now complete. Staying longer doesn't honor the investment. It only increases the cost. The fifth reason, you're addicted to the hope that he'll finally change. This one is neurological before it's emotional. When someone hurts you and then shows warmth, even briefly, even inconsistently, your brain releases dopamine. Not because you're being rewarded, because you're anticipating a reward that keeps almost arriving. The almost is the mechanism. The hope is the hook. You've seen glimpses of who he could be, moments of real tenderness, real presence, real effort. And those glimpses are not nothing. They're what makes this so hard, because part of him genuinely exists in those moments. A client I'll call Anna described it this way. Every time I was about to leave, he became the person I fell in love with, just long enough to make me think I'd been wrong about everything. She wasn't wrong about everything. She was right about the glimpses. She just hadn't understood yet that a person can contain genuine warmth and still be fundamentally unavailable. Both things can be true, and hoping the first will eventually overcome the second is not a strategy. It's a vigil. The sixth reason. You're terrified of being alone. Not lonely, alone. The specific kind of alone that means no one is coming, no one to text at the end of the day, no one who knows the small details of your life, the particular silence of a home that contains only you. That fear is real. I'm not going to minimize it. It is a real loss, a real transition, a real grief. But here's what I've watched happen inside that fear, in client after client. The anticipation of being alone is almost always worse than being alone actually is. The mind builds the worst version. The reality, once you're inside it, is different, quieter, stranger, and eventually, for most people, more livable than they believed possible. A woman I'll call Petra said something I still think about. She told me, I was so afraid of the silence. And then I got there and realized the relationship had been louder than the silence ever was. The fear of being alone is keeping you in something that is already making you feel alone. That is worth sitting with. I want you to pause here for a moment, just for a moment. When you imagine your life 2 years from now, still in this relationship, nothing having fundamentally changed, what do you feel in your body when you hold that image? Not what you think, not what you hope, what you feel. That answer matters more than anything I can tell you tonight. The seventh reason. And this is the one most people never say out loud. You feel responsible for what leaving will do to him. He needs you. You know this. Maybe he's told you. Maybe he hasn't needed to. You can feel it. The relationship has a particular architecture where your presence is what keeps things from falling apart. And leaving feels like abandonment, like causing deliberate harm to someone who is already struggling. This is the guilt that doesn't show up in conversations about why you can't leave, because it sounds too noble to be a trap. But it is a trap, and it's one of the most sophisticated ones, because it disguises itself as love. A client I'll call Lena stayed for 3 years past her own breaking point because her partner told her repeatedly that she was the only thing keeping him stable. She believed it. She organized her entire life around not being the cause of his collapse. I asked her once, if a friend came to you and said she was staying in a relationship because she was afraid of what would happen to him if she left, what would you tell her? She didn't answer for almost a minute. Then she said, I'd tell her that's not love. That's a hostage situation. You are not responsible for another adult's stability. You can love someone and still not be the right person to save them. And staying out of guilt, staying because you're afraid of what your absence will create, is not generosity. It is the slow erosion of yourself in exchange for the management of someone else's pain. 7 reasons. Not one of them is weakness. Every single one of them is a very human response to a very difficult situation. But here's what I want you to take from tonight. The question was never, why can't I leave? The question is, what am I protecting by staying? The answer to that question, the honest answer, not the comfortable one, is where the actual work begins. If something in tonight's conversation felt uncomfortably true, if you recognized yourself somewhere in these 7 reasons, share it with someone who might need to hear it. You don't have to say anything. Sometimes just passing something along is enough. And if you want to keep going deeper into this, new conversations here every day. I'll be here if you come back. That's all for tonight.